It's supposed to feel.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the North Shore 9 post-game show. I'm Jim. With me tonight is Connor. Connor, how you doing tonight? Do we still have to do this? You know what?
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a great game, but I feel like there's still plenty to talk about tonight. So
There is. It's just not fun. Games like this are never fun.
It wasn't fun to watch, that's for
No.
sure. But not a whole lot happening in the game offensively in particular, especially with people on base. Pitching wise, no one really looked great, but let's kind of start with Andre Jackson. So before we actually get into it, Pirates lose today 5-1. First game of a 3-game series. Andre Jackson, his second start as a Pirate, looked really good out of the bullpen his first 2 appearances. He's kind of looked a little bit more I guess pedestrian, you can say, in his 2 starts. But today he goes 4 1/3, gives up 4 hits, 2 runs, walks 3, strikes out 6 though. So like the stuff was good. Command though a little off. What were your thoughts on Andre Jackson today? What did you see?
I mean, he was fine. I've been I have to measure my words carefully here. He's been better than advertised, right? Because you don't usually expect a guy who's bad in the Dodgers system to go somewhere else and then pitch better, right? That's not something that usually happens with those guys. But I mean, the stuff is fine. I would assume I haven't really done a real in-depth of why he was so bad in LA, but I would assume it would be the command because this stuff is decent. It's MLB caliber stuff. The breaking, the curveball especially is decent. Mid 90s touches, upper 90s with the fastball.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the stuff and that's what makes him interesting, right? You can see why the Pirates would claim a player like this. He's
the kind of player they should have been claiming for the last 3 years, but instead we got Jared Eichhoff.
You mentioned the command issues. That was his problem. There are 2 issues. One was just way too many walks, and then 2, which we're starting to kind of see rear its head here. A lot of home runs, which is Jackson.
Which is possibly the problem of a command issue because he's even the best stuff when it gets left out over the heart of the plate. Because he didn't really, because I don't know if that, because I wasn't really paying attention when the pitch was thrown, but I couldn't tell offhand if it was a slider or a changeup.
It was
a changeup. Yeah. I mean, it broke decently. It's just when it breaks out in the heart of the plate, it's going to get hit. When off speed is left middle like that, it gets taken pretty long way. And that did.
Yeah, he throws those right on right changeups quite often.
Yeah.
And when he can bury them like down and in, they're very effective. But that ball didn't get in on the batter. So yeah, ended up being a 2-run homer for Michael A. Taylor, who's not really known for his bat, but here we are. A little bit more on Jackson that I kind of want to go into. We mentioned the stuff like the whiff rate is good. He had 13 swings and misses today, 40% whiff rate on that changeup, 50% whiff rate on his slider, 45% whiff rate on his fastball. So it's one of those things where like when he's putting the ball where it should be, he's getting swings and misses because the stuff is really good, but it's just the consistency is lacking. And when you are not consistent and you're walking batters and then you have home run issues, that's kind of where things can fall apart. And that was really just his downfall today. He walked the batter, and then he threw a bad pitch that Taylor made him pay for.
Yeah, all in all, I thought he pitched really well for what you would expect of him in that role.
Yeah, I think Sean here brings up a good point. He seems fine. Like stuff wise,
if Jackson is like going into camp is in the mix for guys in the pen next year, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's perfectly reasonable with what we've seen of him. Beto too. Because I mean, we saw Beto, flash, 98.
Yeah.
I mean, Beto's kind of that same. I wouldn't say the stuff for Beto isn't quite as good, but it's still MLB level stuff when he's locating it.
And in short spurts. That's kind of the key.
And
here.
in short spurts. It's just kind of abominable that this team is, through both injuries and trades, now has to underperformance, because pretty much everything that could go wrong with the rotation this year has. It's kind of abominable that there are now 2 bullpen days, and we're looking at functionally a third now that Oviedo's innings are being limited.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the main problem here, right? Like Andre Jackson shouldn't be starting games. He shouldn't be pitching into the 5th inning in games. And the main reason for that is, injuries. You're trading away your starters at the deadline. So we're here now. And the lack of performance by Roansy Contreras and Luis Ortiz and Quinn Priester. Like all 3 of those guys have been given ample chances this season, and none of them have taken advantage of it. So we're left here now with Andre Jackson starting games, as well as Osvaldo Beto starting games. And it's going to be like this probably for the next
I like
7
both
weeks.
of those guys. I really do. I don't have an issue with either of them.
I don't like them as starters.
Yeah, I don't like them as starters, but I don't have an issue with them as players. It's like the Connor Joe. When Connor Joe was being forced to start every day for like 2 months and everybody was ganging up on him, it's like, this guy's a fine ball player, but he's not an everyday player. He's a platoon guy. He's just being forced into a role that he never should have been forced into, because that's what bad teams do.
Seems like there's a lot of people being forced into roles.
There is. It's a running theme with this team.
Now.
It absolutely is a running theme with this team. It's inescapable.
So speaking of, Andre Jackson, again, I'm not going to go ahead and say it was a good start. I'm not going to say it was a bad start. It was fine for what you can expect from Andre Jackson. I'm interested in seeing more from him. I expect him to get plenty of opportunities to show us what he's got down the stretch here. But let's kind of shift gears before we kind of get into the bullpen. I do want to talk about this offense. Let's start with just the good stuff, and then we'll get into the bad stuff, because there's plenty of bad stuff here. Endy Rodriguez 3 for 4. He had himself a game. Like he's good at the plate. Yeah, he looked good at the plate. Weighted runs created plus well above 100 right now. The guy's just a hitter, and he seems to kind of be adjusting at the major league level. And I'm pretty excited to see what he can do down the stretch, because I think this is his second 3-hit game in at least like a week or so. So he's really turning it on, and really all 3 of those hits today. One was kind of a blooper, but the other 2 kind of laced him.
What's his walk rate? Because, I mean, obviously he showed the ability to get on base and draw walks in the minor leagues.
9.2.
That's his walk rate at MLB?
Yep.
That's good.
That's fine. Yeah. That's just fine. Yeah.
I was just curious. That wasn't like a feeling like, he's not drawing enough walks.
Well, he's putting together like professional bats. Like he looks like he belongs up there.
Yeah, he's not looking to draw walks. He's earning them. Mm-hmm. He's making the pitchers throw him his pitches, and if not, he's not going to. He's not looking to draw a walk.
Yeah. No, he's adjusting well. Again, today's 3 for 4 performance gets him up to a 103 weighted runs created plus. Brian Reynolds staying hot too. He gets 3 hits today. He just got to keep it up. Like he's well on his way to putting together an actual nice season now, where if we would have had this conversation a month ago, you would have been like, Brian Reynolds needs to be better. He's been better. So. All right, on to the bad stuff. Let's
first,
start
before
with...
we get to the bad stuff, I want to
Okay.
this, because there was a moment in this. The umpiring was, in case you didn't watch it, the umpiring was awful. It was, most of it was for Pirates pitchers, strikes not being called strikes, but there was some of it on the batter's side. But there were two especially egregious calls. It was Andre Jackson, and they were very obvious strikes. And Endy turned around and was jawing at the umpire, and the umpire jawed right back at him and got up in his face. And so Shelton, after the inning, Shelton was talking to Endy in the dugout, and then he went out and he had a very spirited discussion with the umpire. So we've criticized Shelton for that a lot. Not undeserved for not protecting his players from bad umpiring. Yeah. He protected his players from bad umpiring today.
That's fair too. And then the broadcast even caught it too. And I mean, I'm pretty sure he said, quote, "Shut the hell up," end quote, to Endy Rodriguez. So yeah,
because Shelton, it was pretty obvious that Shelton walked up to Endy and was like, "What the hell did he say to you?"
Yep.
And then Shelton, upon hearing that the ump told him to shut the hell up, stormed out there and protected his guy, because you don't tell my catcher to shut the hell up after you just blew 2 calls.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, and that was another piece of this game where, Endy Rodriguez kind of asserting leadership on the field. Like, if someone's got to say it, right? And he was the one to do it. And like I said, we harp on Shelton a lot of times when he doesn't deserve things, but it was good for him to go out there and at least defend himself. And I think the umpire knew he was wrong, because the umpire gave him
the umpire gave him a surprising amount of leeway, because there are some times where the umpire just knows that they blew it, right? Yeah,
I think that this was one of those cases where I think the umpire was like, "Yeah, probably shouldn't have said that." So.
Inbox from Neil Shelton Masterclass.
Yeah, I was waiting for Neil to hop in the Discord or something at one point today, and just to say those 2 words, but I missed them. So again, great game by Endy, great game by Reynolds. Let's move on though. I think a hot topic today, all over Twitter, Discord was kind of talking about it a lot too. There's a lot to talk. We'll talk about 2 guys in particular here for at length, but let's start with Henry Davis. He goes 0 for 4 today, strikes out 3 times. There was a play in right field also where I believe it was a 96% catch rate on the fly ball. It's just one of those balls that just has to be caught when it's hit in the air. Shallow right field, ended up kind of just dropping in between Rivas, Peguero, and Davis. Davis didn't get the best jump on the ball, and it led to some runs. It led to some more runs. I think it's fair for people to be frustrated and upset with the way that Henry Davis looks in right field. Okay, yes. And I'm saying this because it's bad. It's some pretty bad field play, right? I think at the same time though, you have to recognize this is a position he's never played before.
He's being given an impossible task.
He's being put in a situation that is pretty difficult for him.
Once again, the Pirates are not putting their players in the best position to succeed, and they're doing it with a really damn important player, because they've told this guy that he's a catcher, and they're presumably still telling him that because he's still getting work at catcher. Yeah. In between games, and he's still attending the catcher meetings and game planning and strategy and all that. And they also have Endy, and Endy's catching, and before Endy it was Hedges and Delay, and now it's Endy and Delay. And it's just at what point it's maddening, because they called this guy up after telling him that he's a catcher, and you're just like, okay, right field with basically like -5 innings in right field in his professional career.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot.
It's totally it's completely unreasonable to expect him to not be a complete disaster out there. And he only I mean, he has been a complete disaster, but imagine how bad it would be if his arm wasn't as good as it is.
Yeah, the arm is like his saving grace out there. The rest of it's bad. And we can point to when he was called up, he had played 13 total games in right field in his life. Like, we're talking about a guy who, I mean, he didn't do this in spring training. He didn't do this in the Arizona Fall League. He didn't do this at Louisville. He didn't do this in high school. Like, he's been a catcher his entire life. And you put him out in the outfield, which is a completely different thing than being a catcher. And you're going to see
this isn't like going from catcher to first base or third base to first base, or shortstop to second.
Right.
Catchers
don't shag fly balls.
Yeah, they don't shag fly balls. They don't have to, they don't have to learn routes. They don't have to learn how the ball bounces off the wall.
Like, even if you're a shortstop or a second baseman and you get stuck out in right field, like you shag fly balls during batting practice. You've seen fly balls in your life. Henry Davis hasn't. And so that's kind of where we're at now. And yeah, like it's frustrating. I get why fans are upset. And, watching the game, obviously I'm very frustrated with how he looks in right field too. But I think what sucks about the whole situation right now is there's really not any other choice. Like,
no,
you're just going to have to deal with it because Henry Davis needs to be getting major league at bats. It will do him no good being in AAA, just crushing the ball off of people like Roansy Contreras and Luis Ortiz, who those are the kind of people who are in AAA. They're not major league pitchers, right? And he's already proven that he has nothing more to learn in the minor leagues.
No, he doesn't.
The only thing Henry Davis needs right now from an offensive standpoint is to see major league pitching and learn how to hit major league pitching. There's going to be lumps along the way, but he's just going to have to learn on the job. And part of that is just we're going to see bad right field play from him because there's nothing else to do.
I'm not going to sugarcoat this and act like his catcher defense is good. It's not. Because this comment here, he obviously can't play catcher, man. He can't. I mean, I'm not going to say that he can't, but he's a bad catcher. He's a bad receiver. He straight up drops pitches at times. It's bad. He's a bad framer. He's got a good arm back there. He can throw out runners. He's physically the size you'd like that out of a blocker, but he's not that skilled at blocking. But he's athletic enough that if he gets enough reps there, I think that he could at least be competent. And I feel the same way about right field. But it's just if it was so obvious that he wasn't a good catcher and it would take longer for him to become a good catcher, why the fuck was he playing catcher in the minors at all? If they're not going to just let him catch and let him develop there, and they have Endy Rodriguez, who's been fine back there, why are we doing this? Why are they? It doesn't make sense to me.
All fair questions. It's almost like they didn't really know what to do. Having both him and Endy, and you saw it too. Like starting them off in different levels. Henry Davis was just whatever he was doing in Altoona just wasn't doing him any good because he was just completely on a whole other stratosphere than every other person at that level. So it's been kind of just a weird plan all along. And if we want to go further down this road here, it probably starts with Endy Rodriguez should have been on the opening day roster. If Endy Rodriguez is on the opening day roster, then Henry Davis is in AAA, and then you can be like, "Hey, we have a major
yet another reason
here.
To not."
It's Endy, and
then you don't have Hedges starting every day for half a season.
Yeah,
and he can just be the backup, and it's just a cascade. It's just a series of comedic errors.
Yeah,
and as far as his hitting goes, I kind of expected this. I mean, I don't know about you, but with a guy who tries to pull the ball as much as he does, with such a he only had like 518 minor league plate appearances. That's barely a full season of minor league play, and a lot of that was spent with a broken wrist.
Yeah.
A guy who tries to pull the ball as much as he does is going to have an ugly adjustment period against major league pitch sequencing and major league breaking stuff. We saw that with O'Neal Cruz. I actually have the numbers pulled up here. Through Cruz's debut, through this date, through August 18th last year, he was hitting 197, had an on base of 242, and had a 393 slugging, good for a WRC plus of 73, with a 37% K rate and a just shy of a 6% walk rate. Like, O'Neal Cruz was statistically worse through this point in the season compared to Henry Davis. And, you know, we all saw what happened with him in September when he finally adjusted. Guys that try to pull the ball as much as this, they have trouble adjusting to the breaking stuff. They really do. Just give him time. You know, I'm not particularly worried about this point. The one thing I am particularly worried about the offense is that they're just giving him too much to do on his plate, and he's not getting enough time to make those adjustments.
Yeah, I think it's asinine to think that any rookie can just come up and not struggle, right? We clearly see Henry Davis's skills at the plate. Like, you don't suck if you take Shohei Ohtani deep twice. Like,
No,
you've got something going for you if you're able to do something like that. And then you look at the approach, right? Like, he's walking 10.7% of the time. The strikeouts are not high. Like, he's putting together good at bats. He's
also had some.
Results
He's
right
also
now.
just had some awful BABIP luck. The last time I looked,
awful BABIP.
Yeah, like literally, like almost statistically impossible over the full course of a season. BABIP luck. It was something like 255 the last time I looked, and I would assume it's only gone down since then.
Yeah, BABIP currently 266, but like in the last few weeks, like when he's really been slumping, his BABIP has been like below 200.
Yeah, no, that's completely abnormal. That's not possible for any hitter, let alone somebody who hits the ball as hard as regularly as Davis does.
Yeah, and you saw it tonight. I mean, he should have a double tonight, but there was just a freak, crazy good play by Royce Lewis. So it's frustrating, and I think Pirates fans have the right to be frustrated with how he looks. But it's kind of an impossible situation right now, and quite frankly, we're just gonna have to deal with it. We're just gonna have to deal with it right now. There's no other alternative.
It was just like with Cruz last year. It was just like, what are you doing by sending him down? What does he have left to learn? You just have to ride it out with him and hope he improves, hope he adjusts. And he did. He adjusted in a big way in the last couple months of the season.
All right. On to another person. And I think this question is fair. Jack Suwinski goes 0 for 4 tonight, strikes out 2 batters. He goes 0 for 3 with runners in scoring position. He was up in big situations all night long and was terrible. He's now, for the month of August, 4 for 49.
4 for 4. Okay. Thought it was 4 for 48.
Yeah, 4 for 49 now. He hasn't homered since July 24th. Does Jack Suwinski need sent to AAA? I think this is a fair question.
I think it's, I think there's certainly some people that are like, why are you, continuing to put faith in Davis and continuing to, push the alarm bell on Suwinski? Well, Suwinski has like 750 plate appearances now. He should be expected to be better. He should be expected to have the situational awareness to not look at strike 3 twice in a game with runners in scoring position. And he doesn't. I'm not saying this about the person. I'm saying this specifically about the plate approach. do not get me wrong. I'm sure Jack is a very nice guy. His plate approach is selfish. He is so passive because he does not want to swing at anything that he thinks is a ball, that he just has complete disregard for the situation, runners on, the score of the game, anything. And he's just so passive, and we just see this night in, night out, and you got to swing the bat. You got to swing the bat to be useful. And he just doesn't.
Yeah, and on top of
I
that,
I almost wonder if it's mental, because it is just such an extreme that, like, I have trouble imagining that even Andy Haynes would be pushing this on him. I cannot fathom that even Andy Haynes at this point would be telling Jack Sawinski to keep looking at those pitches. I mean, am I wrong?
I think the issue with Sawinski and what makes it so frustrating, like you can bring up the chase rate all you want, and it's elite. That's just his kind of that is his.
It's gonna be if I walked up there and I never swung at any pitch ever, then my chase rate would be elite too.
The problem with Jack Sawinski right now is if you aren't going to swing the bat unless like the pitch is exactly what you're looking for, which is basically where he's at right now, then you need to have a hell of a lot higher contact rate than he does. His contact rate is well below league average. And so what happens when you've got a contact rate this low and you're already taking a ton of pitches, it's just basic math at that point that you're going to strike out a lot because you're not giving yourself that many opportunities to put the ball in play. Contact rate right now this season, 71.3%. That's 5% below league average. And like I said, when you combine that with how many pitches he takes, it's a recipe for disaster, which is what we're seeing right now. He's been completely useless for well over a month now.
And it's not the first time that he's gone through a stretch like this. This is probably one of the worst.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the worst ones he's had. But I mean, it's not unusual to see stretches similar to this out of him.
Yeah. And it's so frustrating because you look at the overall body of work and you're like, this guy should be a pretty decent Major League Baseball player.
Right.
And he's just not. Like, he's been so bad for so long now. At the bare minimum, you can't keep trotting him out in the 3-4 in the third or fourth hole. Like, if you're going to play him, you got to stick him seventh. Like, you can't be putting him in a position where every time he's up there is a big spot and he just continues to not come through over and over and over again.
I even long term with him, I just don't know what to do, because I'm not really convinced that center field is a long term thing for him. I don't think that anybody should be under the guise that it is. Because he's decent at it. He's decent at it in the same way that Reynolds was, and except he's not as decent as Reynolds was. Where in a few years, I could easily see him regressing to being just an awful center fielder. And it's just with and if Davis works out like you would hope, I'm pretty sure he's playing right field moving forward, and Reynolds is playing left field. You can't just have an awful defensive center. So I don't really know where he fits in.
I think we just
he's got
to keep talking about the approach. He just has to be more aggressive. Like, he has to swing the bat more. He has to swing more. It's 37% swing rate right now. League average is 47%. So he basically swings 25% less than league average. It's just he doesn't make contact enough for it to be a sustainable way to approach hitting. When you're swinging at 1/3 of the pitches thrown to you, which is essentially where he's at right now, and you swing and miss at 30% of those, you're going to strike out a lot. you're going to strike out a lot. And so that's what we're seeing. But like, what's the answer?
I don't know. Because I think it's at that point where it's just how many more chances does he get, right? How many more? Because it's not that he clearly has potential. You know, all the peripheral stats to indicate every peripheral stat in the universe that a team is looking at for a guy with power potential is absolutely there. Just the approach is just so bad.
Oh, all right. Well, those
I
were.
I almost wonder if he's getting traded this offseason. Because he's been a guy for a while, I would think could like randomly get traded.
Well, and I could see a team like looking at him and saying, "We can fix him," you know.
Right.
So I could see him being coveted, and I could also see the Pirates just being like, "We can't continue with this type of production." So it's gonna have to be either Sawinski just gets better with the Pirates, which you can say that he took a step forward, this season from last season. I think that's fair to say, but he's still just being an incredibly inconsistent player. I think trading him this offseason is certainly a possibility.
Especially if it's for starting pitching.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. I think trading him is certainly on the table.
Because it's not that he doesn't have value. It's just that I'm concerned that he doesn't have value to the Pirates.
Right now, he's not. I can tell you that much.
Like, just not to get too specific with names, but like Jose Quintana, the Mets are in a position where I'm not sure they really particularly care about 2024. Obviously, they'll attempt to field a competent team because they're not an organization that's just going to field 120 loss team like that. But if, somebody offers you Jack Sawinski for Jose Quintana and some random reliever, I think they do that.
Potentially. I've had Mets fans on Twitter tell me too that they would gladly take Jack Sawinski because they obviously don't watch him every night.
Yeah. We'll see. Those are the people we'll be tricking. Those are the people we'll be tricking.
Could you imagine New York Jack Sawinski in New York?
That's part of my motivation for bringing that up. I have ulterior motives.
It would be a bloodbath.
It would. No, it would.
All right. Well, we've been on here for 32 minutes. We had a lot to talk about. We're not going to get into Hayes. He's been really good. He was bad tonight, but we'll give him a pass. He made
a fantastic defensive play.
Yeah, we'll give him a pass. But runners in scoring position was the issue today. 1 for 14. They left 11 guys on base. Bless you.
Excuse me.
Bullpen. Johan Ramirez hit 2 guys. He has no idea where he's throwing the ball.
No, he has absolutely no idea.
Angel Perdomo, 2 runs given up. Barucki gave up a run.
That wasn't really his fault.
Perdomo's wasn't.
Yeah,
there was some bad defense. Yeah, there was some bad defense, some lucky hits. But the bullpen didn't really impress me. No one in the bullpen impressed me tonight. So we're not going to spend much time on them. Tomorrow, game 2, probably the Pirates' best chance to win, maybe, but I don't know. They got Dallas Keuchel on Sunday, but Mitch Keller tomorrow against Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray's had a hell of a season. Mitch Keller. Really yeah. Mitch Keller coming off a pretty good start last time out. So hopefully he can continue that because he's big.
And it's a really, I shouldn't say crappy because our offense is really crappy too, but it is a pretty poor Twins offense.
I think it's fair to say that this Twins offense is pedestrian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they have like the same amount of players with OPS as over 700 as we do, don't they?
I don't know. That would I would have to do math for that. So we're gonna hold off on that. But Yeah, that's at 8. Let's see, tomorrow at what's the game time on that? 7:10 Eastern time. So a little bit earlier than tonight. Yeah. They got to take that game if they want to make this series something worthwhile.
Oh, you know what? Props to Derek Shelton. He proved that the Pirate can hit water if he fell out of a boat. Unlike Jack Sawinski.
Yep.
Yep.
On that note, let's get out of here. Pirates lose 5-1. Thank you all for watching. That's all I got.
Yeah, join the Discord if you haven't.
Yeah, for sure.
Better than X or Twitter X or whatever they're calling it now.
Absolutely.
All right. Peace.
We'll see you tomorrow, guys.
Hey, you all. Thank you for watching. I know we try to provide the most entertaining content that we can, and we'd love to spread it to as many people as possible. So I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but if you could take the 5 seconds to like this video and subscribe to the page, it helps out so much more than you know. Thank you, and let's go Bucks.